Good evening, everybody. We're going to start. City of Sweetwater Special Commission meeting. Meeting date Wednesday, June 13th, 2018 at 8 p.m. Commission Chambers, 500 Southwest, 109th Avenue. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Voting on the absence of Commissioners Duranzo Alonso and Mayor Lopez.
Please all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now for the invocation. Dear Heavenly Father, we come before you now, Lord, and we give you thanks, Father. We give you thanks for being able to be here today, Lord, for being able for giving the opportunity, Lord, to lead our city into prosperity, Father. Lord, right now we pray that you grant us the wisdom that we need, Father, to continue doing that role as elected officials. Lord, we also pray that you watch over our first responders and our police officers, Father, and also our military as they continue to serve abroad and domestic, Lord. Lord, we pray for these things in your holiest of names. Amen.
Amen.
For the record, Mayor Lopez walked in.
Thank you. Public comments. We have Rainier Diaz de la Portilla.
Greetings, Mr. Chair and the entire City Commission. Just wanted to make a few brief remarks. Thank you for having me as our meeting gets started. My name is, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Rainier Diaz de la Portilla. I actually represented Sweetwater. Maybe the younger members of the commission may not remember, but for a brief time in the late 90s. I went to FIU, a few blocks away as well, where I got my undergraduate bachelor's degree. And I currently work about 3 miles away at a law firm called the Gallardo Law Firm, where I practice in different areas of law, civil and criminal law, mediations, and arbitrations. So I've been close to Sweetwater, even though not living in it, and I have been following your progress throughout the years with great interest, sometimes from afar, sometimes a little bit closer. And I have seen the city progress at a steady pace, and sometimes, quite frankly, at a meteoric pace. And I congratulate you for the job that you have done in shepherding the city through the hard times, the challenging times, and all the growth. Because all growth, as we know, brings pain. And with the exciting future that Sweetwater has ahead of it, there are going to be challenges as well. So I just wanted to let you know that I'm applying to be your city attorney, which I know this is not the time nor the place to discuss that issue. I'll be back for your June 25th meeting, I believe, to discuss that issue. But I look forward to a transparent and open process as I go through the application process, and of course, to meeting with you individually. I've attempted to reach out to all of you with the numbers I was given from the clerk's office. I don't know if you got my messages. I wasn't able to speak to all of you. I spoke to many of you, and I just hope to have that opportunity going forward before June 25th, so you can learn a little bit more about me as far as my professional life is concerned, my experience, and what I could offer the city of Sweetwater as a public servant as we forge ahead to, I think, what is going to be a very exciting future for the city of Sweetwater. And I think the city needs people who can make tough decisions, because we're going to have some tough decisions ahead of us, and who works for the city commission and who is responsive to his or her bosses, which are the city commissioners. So I thank you again for these brief moments you've given me, these few minutes. I'm happy to answer any questions today, but again, I know this is not the time to apply for the city attorney's job. I have sent you all my resume through the clerk's office, and she's been very gracious, and thank you again, Ms. Garcia, for everything. She's been very gracious and cooperative, and I also forwarded the application and my resume and a cover letter to her, so I hope you got that as well. Thank you, commissioners, and have a good evening.
Thank you, sir.
We also have Elena Ortega.
Hello, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. to the commission, and I'd like to address the mayor, vice mayor, the entire commission, Madam Clerk, the police chief, and police officers present, and just like to introduce myself. Again, I have been here before. I'm running for judge, for county court judge for Miami-Dade County, and the election is August 28th, and of course it's a countywide election for the judges. And Sweetwater is close and near to my heart for many reasons. I have had a business, a law firm in Sweetwater for years, helped a lot of homeowners save their homes when they were facing foreclosure. My children also attended schools, all 6 of them, here in Sweetwater, and I have also resided in Sweetwater, although right now I reside in Doral. So I like to just remind all of you that I'm running for Judge Elena Ortega Towler, that I'll be on the ballot, and that it'll be my pleasure to serve also this community as a county court judge. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much for coming. We're going to move right into item number 5, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Sweetwater, Florida, in connection with a student rental housing facility to be known as University Bridge, authorizing the mayor to execute a certificate of approval for purposes of Section 147F of the Internal Revenue Code of the issuance by the Capital Trust Agency of its revenue bonds for such facility, approving the form of a payment in lieu of taxes agreement for such facility, and providing an effective date. Mayor Lopez.
Move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 6, a resolution of the mayor and commission of the City of Sweetwater approving budget amendment number 2 of the city operating budget for fiscal year 2017-2018 and amending the said operating budget of the City of Sweetwater. Mayor Lopez.
Mayor Lopez.
Mayor Lopez, we're waiting.
Where are we at?
Item 6.
Oh, okay, the budget revision.
Yes.
Correct. Does anybody have any questions?
Lenny.
I have questions.
I'm sorry. I have to. Do I have a motion and a second to open for discussion?
You know what? Thank you for saying that. Motion for discussion.
So through the chair.
All in favor?
Aye. Through the chair.
I believe
Is there a second?
There was no second.
there was a
Second.
second. It was seconded
It was
by.
second. It was second.
Yes.
Okay.
Right, so
I believe Marco had the.
Marcos.
Thank
yeah,
you.
he had requested it.
So, Mr. Mayor, thank you for presenting this item and giving us more data. I really appreciate that. I'm seeing here, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm showing an approximate additional revenues of about $1.3 million. Is that accurate?
That's accurate.
And that those revenues are from red light cameras?
That's correct. Well, other sources, but primarily that one.
Okay, so just the ballpark. I'm not gonna hold you to the actual cent. So I'm seeing that the bulk of that money, roughly 1.1, is going towards law enforcement.
That's correct.
Okay, I'm all for that. So thank you for that. Out of the 1.1, how many more jobs? How many more police positions are we looking at?
Okay. Problem is the $1.1 million that you're looking at there, that is the 53% that goes to ATS. The increase in employment personnel on this budget that don't really go to that, you go to the law enforcement page on the budget, it's four positions were converted from part-time to full-time. Was it 4 or 5?
There were 5 positions,
Five positions
converted
from
to
part-time to
full-time.
full-time, and 1 a new full-time employee.
Okay, so I guess the reason for my confusion is if we're showing 1.1 million in revenues, but now I'd say half of that goes to ATS, then we really can't count that as a revenue. Is that accurate? Maybe as a typo, or?
No, you always have to show the revenue, then you show the expense.
So what is Okay, so out of the 1.1, we're looking at 600,000, 550,000 in actual revenue that we're going to be looking at net. Is that
So let me-
accurate?
I went through it. It's a little convoluted. Let me just give you a little bit of insight because I digested it for a little while.
That's what's got me
little while ago.
confused.
Okay, if you look at the law enforcement increase of 1.399440 on page 3 of the supplemental appropriation
Oh, the
changes.
summary.
Okay, the where it says professional fees increased by 1.106319, that's not an increase
Tell
in
me what
revenue.
page you're on. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
I'm sorry, I'm on page 3 of the
the
summary of supplemental appropriation changes and requests.
Page 3.
For the summary.
Okay, so I'm on page 3. Okay, good.
Okay, where it says professional fees and it says the word increased, that is actually not an increase in revenue. It's an increase in it's an expenditure. So you have to back that out from the 1.399440 that's that shows as an overall increase on top, which reduces your exposure by whatever that calculation is. I backed out the numbers, and once you do that properly with the proper nomenclature, it does add up to the 1.399. Your actual increase is going to be an increase in personnel expenses by $132,179. And you and I had a little bit of dialogue before, and it was a little confusing, but I was able to, digest it and figure it out. You have that, and you also have the increase that is as a result of the net motion and the cybersecurity for the different computers as well as the body cams, which leaves you to a basically a variance of $186,308 in the budget. Now, to clarify as far as the position, I went back just to make sure that I had the numbers accurate as far as the questions that you had earlier. There are a total of 43 full-timers, including one suspended body, and you have a total of 12 part-timers. Our hiring plan going forward, short-term and long-term, is to attrition part-timers into full-time positions as they become eligible and as they become available and fiscally possible, to get to the figure that I originally wanted to about 3 years ago, which is about 55 officers that you and I have discussed in the past. So that's where we're at this point. I went ahead and in the abundance of caution, prepared individual memos for the additional items, including the body-worn cameras, which is from Axion, and there are attached memos that reflect the costs associated with it, the reasoning as to why this particular company was chosen. I go on to that also includes, by the way, TASER included in the program and unlimited storage in the cloud. You go on to the next additional item, which is going to be your Net Motion. Net Motion is a piece of software that basically is a requisite by our FDLE partners as far as their technical audit is concerned, which ensures accountability as to the accessibility that the officers have through their wireless cards and all computers for that matter. And the costs associated with that is also there. They are a sole source. They service 70% of the nation's largest agencies, well over 500,000 first responders. And the initial cost for the software itself is $19,468, with roughly a recurring cost of $3,100 a year.
And I appreciate that, Chief. I don't have any questions pertaining to the body-worn cameras or the software. My questions are, we're looking at a $1.3 million increase to law enforcement budget. We're converting 4 part-time positions into 4 full-time positions and an additional body, making 5 full-time positions. So the budget amendment should be from the normal allocated $35,000 a year for a part-time position and the additional $30,000 to convert that person to full-time. So if I can just finish my thought process,
Sure.
just so we can all be on the same page. So based on that premise alone, looking at an additional $30,000 times 4 is $120,000. Now, you add an additional full-time body of $42,500 plus 40% payroll burden, roughly costs $60,000. So now we're looking at a $180,000 increase. If you want to add 25% of that for court overtime, whatever the case is, you want to round numbers, $200,000. I'm all for it. But the issue that I'm having is my math doesn't add up, and we're looking at a $1.3 million increase, and I'm only looking at $250,000 in actual boots on the ground.
Well, the actual figures are derived from the finance department's projections of expenditures regarding the per body accountability or an expenditure per body. I can tell you that I did do the math, based on the numbers that are here. The only thing I found that was a little confusing was the nomenclature and the wording used as to increase or decrease in the numbers. But if you back out all the numbers here, it does add up to the 1.399440 and the net bodies that are accounted for here, which is 42 full-timers and 1 suspended officer, and the additional 12 part-time officers. I went ahead and I did the math twice to make sure that the numbers were correct, taking into account the ambiguity as to the language and the wording. But the personal expenses, from what I gathered here, are 132,179 to account for the difference in the benefits portion of the officers themselves and part-time to full-time. Those are-
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just want
No,
to
go
get
ahead.
my questions out. Are our officers receiving a percentage increase across the board? Maybe that, I don't see that.
Well, remember, you also have here, there have been issues with the table as far as the scales, as far as the contract is concerned, and the pay scales.
No, I understand that,
As a
but my
whole.
question is, are we giving our cops a raise? Yes or no?
Well, not right now.
So, based on this budget, a raise is not involved.
A raise is
And
not
I'm just-
involved.
And I'm just trying to get my questions out. And
No,
I
no, no.
appreciate the information you're giving. I just want
No, there is no raise as
to
far
hurry up
as
with my questions so the other commissioners can get along
absolutely,
and ask
Commissioner.
questions.
There are no raises associated with this budget amendment.
All right, so is anybody else confused with these numbers?
Well, I think,
Are you-
excuse me, through the chair. I just think maybe we should clearly, delineate what's an expense and what's a revenue. If we can chart in one line, one column, the expenses. and chart in-
I don't disagree with you, Commissioner. Like I said, I went through it. The language is a little bit ambiguous. I was able to figure it out based on just computations and calculations.
Yeah.
There might be a better way to clarify the memo in the future. I'll get together with finance so
Yeah.
we get some additional wording in there,
Yeah.
which might help.
Yeah, it's just simple. With like our finance department, the same way that a budget is done, or the general city budget is done. You have one page that just shows all the expenses, and then on another page it shows all the revenues, and then
And again, I don't disagree with you.
Yeah.
I'm merely speaking as to
Yeah.
what I have in front of me, and
Yeah.
the calculations, computations that I did. As
Yeah.
far as structure and format, that's more of a finance issue. But I'll be more than happy to work with you or with anyone regarding
And
our
let me just
particular-
make sure I understand this correctly. So this amount over here where it says professional fees, cameras.
That's an
in-
expense.
That's an expense, right?
That's an expense.
Okay, perfect. Gotcha. So it's the red light traffic cameras, there was an increase in 1.1 million.
In expenditures, yes, this is basically payments that go out to anybody other than the city of Sweetwater.
And do you know off the top of your head the associated revenue for that same stream?
The increase in revenues for law enforcement total was 1.399440.
So that's
No,
really.
I'm sorry, that's
1.2.
the expense,
1.2.
including that. 1.2. I'm
But
sorry,
that's where the
1.2.
major revenue is coming from, correct?
Correct.
Yes, that is
Okay.
correct.
Yeah.
Through the chair, if nobody has any other questions, I have a few of those.
Go ahead.
And by the way, just step in if anybody has questions. So, on the first page, I'm not going to put the officer's name, is not here, but position number 420004, sergeant. And let me know when you find that.
I got it.
So the salary is $86,888 a year.
Yes.
The total employee expense is $159,000.
Yes.
So payroll burden is $72,000.
This is
Why
an
is that?
anomaly. Let me explain the anomaly here. This is an anomaly not as a result of an issue created by the current administration or the current overall or global picture at hand. This is the result of an understanding or agreement for back pay or additional pay owed to this particular individual that in part, I believe the administration is disputing as well, if I'm not
So
mistaken.
why is that depicted on this line item so we can understand that?
You have to project the expenditure in the event that you do have to expend it.
Okay, so there's one scenario, and I have several others where we are. The payroll burden is huge. It's not the normal payroll burden of in a municipal government. You're looking at 40 to 43%, 45%, depending on how many people are in the health plan. That's 45% is normal payroll burden, but in some of these payroll burdens, you're looking at 65% payroll burden. So we're going above here.
Sure. And
I don't have a problem over budgeting, so we never get caught with our pants down. But again, my math is off where I just did the numbers. We're looking at 5 additional positions, and we're looking at a budget increase of $1.3 million.
Well, you're
and
not-
and that in itself, I'm just not. It's not
But
registering.
let me go to the first the question that you had regarding the salaries themselves. You have, or this commission and this administration has inherited many years of disparities in pay and somewhat entitlements of pay, if you will, that, in the words of the PBA at one point, it is what it is and you inherited it. So some of these salaries are high, but it's not as a result of any pay raises or anything that we have done directly. Some of these salaries are what they are because of years of increases that have taken place over the years.
Well, I don't have a problem with them getting paid well.
Yeah, well, that's basically what you're looking at. That one that you identified is an anomaly. That $159,000 is an anomaly. And, it was a result of something that occurred prior to this administration coming in. That much I do know, and finance can speak a little bit more about that. I wasn't directly involved in how that happened, but I have some knowledge of what the nuts and bolts were.
Chief, there are a couple here. I mean, that is probably the one that jumps out the highest. But then we also have another one down here for 521-430-046. That jumps up again to $140,625 as the employee total, as opposed to your salary that's only $79,000. Then
Which one is that? I'm sorry, Commissioner. I didn't hear you. Which one is that?
That one was
521.
521-430-046.
046, 140. Okay, I don't know the particular details of all of these. I can tell you that in some cases, some individuals, from my understanding, based on what were here before, based on when they were hired, are entitled to either full insurance at no cost, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not an expert on that matter, but I do know that that was a practice at some point here. That might be one of the factors. I can't tell you on an individual case-by-case basis. I don't know the answer to that.
And also in the cases where you have that the employee total is less than their total salary, is that because of the part-timers that jump to full-time?
That is correct.
Okay.
Through the chair.
Mhm.
Is anybody else seeing the trouble that I'm having equating the numbers?
Yep.
Yes.
So, I mean, look, we all want to support our cops, and we all want to give our cops raises, but we want to do it responsibly. I mean, if you tell me we're going to spend $1.3 million, we're going to hire 20 cops, I'm voting yes right now. But my issue is, I'm only hearing we've converted four part-time positions to full-time, and we hired one full-time position, and that payroll burden doesn't equate to 1.3 million. I'm only looking at it, and I keep doing numbers, and I only get to 200,000, and I give you an additional 50,000 just in case.
Let me just go through this real quick, because just how I went through it. Okay, if you take the $1,399,440 and you back out the $1,106,319,
That's from
that
red light traffic cameras.
correct. Your actual number is $293,121. So the 1.399440 is a little misleading because you have to really back out that 1.106319 before you can start doing your calculations as to what your cost per body and expenditure is on any given line item in the police budget. So what you're really looking at is a variance of $293,121. It's not 1.399440. It's a little misleading. That's why I'm saying the way it was written is not as clear as I would like it to be, but I'm trying to clarify based on my analysis of the document that I have at hand, and that is the nuts and bolts of it. You're looking at $293,121.
Through the chair, who put these
Go ahead.
together? Who put the memo together?
The summary memo?
Yeah.
Annie did it in the finance department, to try to give everybody an explanation of where your increases are and your
No,
decreases.
I actually really appreciate the narrative description of where these, buckets of, money and expenses are coming from. Just standard practice. I mean, when you enumerate expenses, line items, revenues, line items, it makes things pretty crystal. I know that we've already approved this, but, just for the record, so I know, Police FT, line 521-430-021, who's currently employed there, do we know?
I'm sorry, repeat those numbers again?
521-430-021, Police FT. It's on, I can't tell you the page, but it's on the first page of the law enforcement budget.
021?
Yeah.
That's somebody who's maxed out.
Mhm.
Through
Which
the
one?
chair.
I'm sorry, Commissioner.
Just to answer
I just
his
changed the
question.
page. Which
Yeah.
one are you looking at?
It's 521-430-021, police full-time.
7 from the top.
Oh, I see it. I don't know the name associated with that, but it's more than likely somebody with tenure who was probably capped at the highest step and has been privy to also the COLAs and alike on a yearly basis. So this is probably somebody who's got longevity. I don't know the name associated with the job.
Currently, one of our police officers, or is on a pension.
No, this is currently one of our police officers.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely like to know that.
Sure. I mean, you can get the detail from finance. I don't know
Yeah.
off the top of my head, Commissioner.
Through the chair.
Go ahead.
I guess what the chief was trying to explain before is in 2003, I believe, was the year that the PBA contract was negotiated, where prior to that year, any full-time officer had free health insurance for them and their families. And then after that year, now only the employee has insurance, and then their families have to pay for additional coverage. But the payroll burden shouldn't equate to $176,000. That's why I'm saying, regardless who that person is, being topped out on patrol as an officer with their COLAs, and even if they're receiving $88,000, and usually that's our top, we shouldn't have $176,000 payroll burden. So I
can make a pretty good guess as to who that is, because if their salary is $85,000 that it says here, and they actually got paid $117,000, that would have to be Castro that he received back pay.
but he's a sergeant, not a full-time officer.
Right.
So that's not him.
That's right.
So that's got to be him.
So there are errors. There are errors here. Could we maybe defer this item and clean it up a bit to where we can actually get hard language and
Yes.
real numbers, maybe?
Numbers, yeah.
I mean, I'm all for this,
Well,
but
these are real numbers. These
well,
are not,
how about so I can understand it? I mean, is
because this is just
that fair?
yeah, that would be fair. But the only person that received retro during this budget is Castro. That would have to be Castro.
Right, but there's no retro depiction. You know, before we had a line item that said retro, so in here it doesn't say that. And I think, listen, if Annie did this, I think she did a good job. But there are too many. I have too many questions, and normally I wouldn't have questions when I'm looking at a budget and backup documentation. I don't want to put this on Annie at all.
Well, they do have one retro salary adjustment for the total of $68,000, but
So that's Castro.
Yeah, that's got for sure.
68 is the delta.
no, over here. On the last sheet at the bottom, retro salary adjustment, 68,825 for the employee total.
Well, we have several. We have
Yeah, we
in
have
total
several.
in retro, we have 83,000 in retro salaries. We have one for 25,000. We have one for 50,000. We have one for $8,297. At least that's what I'm reading. But I would like language that specifies, like, for example, if it's his revenue, I want a net revenue. I don't want a gross revenue. I want to have actual hard numbers to where if it says 1.3 million in revenue, I don't want to be confused and think, okay, we have an additional 1.3 million dollars in the bank, as opposed to we have to pay half of that to ATS. And with that, I yield.
Through the chair, that's a fantasy budget that you want. You can't do it. You got to give actual revenues and then actual expenses. Because to be able to do it, if you go to the budget and you go to the front, it'll show you on the revenues page. It'll tell you what the revenues are, and then if you come afterwards to the law enforcement, it'll give you the expenses. But to say that you want to see a budget with just net revenue or net proceeds without showing the actual gross revenue and gross expenses, you can't do that.
Well, through the chair.
That's what the summary of that you guys asked for. You can do it through a summary,
I agree
but not
with
in the
you.
budget.
I agree with you, and I think maybe I need to explain it better. Obviously, revenues need to be documented. But when we're looking at a budget increase of $1.3 million, it's based on revenues. That's where the confusion lies. You can't increase a budget if you don't have hard number revenue. So although I agree with you, I think we're not speaking the same language, which is why I'd like something more specific where we can actually look at the numbers. And listen, again, Chief, thank you for hiring more cops, 5 cops. I want 15 more. I want 15 more. I want to make $55,000 a year. I want to have the very best equipment. I want to have 2 free classes a semester at FIU. I want the very best health care for our police officers and our employees. I think we'll get there one day, but this needs to be a little more specific. So with that, I yield. I would, instead of voting no, I'd rather defer this item.
You
So
make a
that's my motion to defer.
I
Second.
second that.
Through the chair, before we vote, again, just to make it clear, because I know Annie, you're under obviously a lot of responsibility now in the interim. And-
Oh, Annie's actually here?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't see that.
And thank you for coming, Annie. I think, just to make it really simple, the same way that we outline our budget, where we show the revenues and we show the expenses, we do the very same thing, We have a line item with a description of all the expenses, the same way we do our annual budget, and then a separate page with a line item with all the revenues. We can do the same thing with the revision, instead of just putting like one giant paragraph with a description of, and we don't know whether or not it's a revenue or it's an expense.
Okay, I second the motion to Commissioner Villanueva.
All in favor?
Aye. No opposed?
No, no, no.
Any nays?
No nays.
Item number 7, an ordinance of the City of Sweetwater relating to regulations of swale areas in the city, amending Chapter 58, amending definitions, creating Section 58-132, providing for codification, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. Do I have a motion?
Through the chair,
I want to hear this.
a motion for,
A motion to discuss.
Motion to discuss?
through the chair.
Second.
Second.
Wait,
All
typically,
in favor?
Aye.
typically, do we need a motion to discuss? I mean, we haven't been doing
Robert's
that.
rule, yeah.
Usually, we just enter into the motion.
You have to have the item on the table in order to discuss it. If nobody's willing to move the item for voting, my suggestion was to the chair that we make a motion for discussion purposes only with a second. That will put the item on the table and you can discuss it. It doesn't obligate you to vote for it, but it allows discussion. But if you don't like it and and nobody wants to make the motion, you can't even have a discussion without the motion and second to discuss. So that's what the chair is getting at.
Okay, so you need to have a motion to discuss in order to
Correct.
discuss.
Right.
Okay,
Unless you're moving to vote, then you can have the discussion
Okay.
after that.
all right, perfect. So I think one of the main reasons that we were looking to table this, at least, one question that I had, and I apologize for not writing this in an email to the administration. So if you maybe just want to make a note of it, I would just like to see some sort of an appellate process in case, a resident would, like to appeal and, to any decision against him where he can, come before the commission and make sure that we understand like the full picture before he's just, fined for having something that,
Well, through the chair, Lynn, I believe that any ordinance provides an appellate process, but in this case, it would be an appellate through the code enforcement magistrate, correct?
Right.
You don't need to have the particular language in here, it's automatic. And then the appellate will go through the code enforcement hearing.
okay.
Is everybody clear on the language that is stated in here?
I don't like it.
It's
Through the chair.
it's convoluted, but it is clear, at least to me. It is clear in its intent of what it's trying to do. Why don't you like it?
So I'm with you through the chair. I'm with you where it's clear. The issue is when we start to, like, for example, the resident that came here last meeting and said, hey, listen, this is not my garbage. I'm being fined for this garbage and this is not my responsibility. Well, this ordinance will in fact make it their responsibility. Not only are we talking about garbage, but I don't think if there's damage to the soil area, we're going to make the resident pay for the damage unless the resident caused the damage.
Correct.
So that's the issue that I have. We're talking about an enforcement issue where arbitrarily, oh, it's on yours, here's a picture. So if I go around town just dropping my garbage on people's swales and code enforcement goes by and takes pictures, now they have to pay for it. That's my issue from an enforcement standpoint.
Right, but then you also go through what was just discussed. There is an appeals process to it, but the burden of proof does fall on the owner, who would
Exactly.
basically have to take a picture of every single day of all his residents and tenants going out.
And now you have a lady who comes
I-
here and
I understand
says,
it.
so I need to put cameras.
Through the chair?
To the chair. Okay.
I understand it, but I do I do know that this is something that that essentially gives the city teeth to ensure, because right after Hurricane Irma, if everybody remembers,
The rats on the street.
the
from
rats
all
on the
stuff?
street, and it was creating already a public health crisis for the residents of the city. So in this sense, it's, I don't want to say forced, but yes, it holds the tenants liable for any material that is encountered in the swales in front of their properties. That there is an appeals process, like, hey, you know, I took care of it, but this wasn't me. I need some help. You know, making sure that this is enforced and nobody's dumping. That's a different situation. I do think the legislation is clear. For me, the intent is clear. That it's a little rough, but it needs to be, in my opinion, because we can't fall. I mean, we're in hurricane season already. We can't fall into that situation again. And obviously, I know we've been plagued. When I worked code enforcement here in the city, we were plagued with people coming in, dumping from the keys, whatever it was, in other people's properties. And hey, we reported them. We made them pick it up, put it back in their stuff, and take it off. It happens. Go ahead.
Yeah, through the chair. No, I was facing the same thing. There is a lot of residents that sometimes they call me, and I even have to go on Sunday, and they're showing me that they didn't drop that in front of the house. That's my concern. And what are they going to do about it? They just, go outside and they see the garbage in front of them. That's what it really, at this point, how can we help them out, by how they need to call somebody to report, before this issue comes, like they will get a fine or a citation. What do they need to do about it?
Remember that you don't normally go straight to a fine. You're going to get a warning before you get a fine, for the process of clarity. Repeat violators will they'll go to a fine. I'll give you a case in point right now. We've got one that one of our code compliance officers cited a property for dumping in front of it. His attorney sent in a letter stating that they've never dumped there, they've never done it, that it's never been their tenants, and I don't want to really say which is the property address or anything. And Vega met with me in my office today, speaking to me about the letter we received from the attorney. And Vega was able to document, even one of the times, Vega photographed garbage on top of a pickup truck that was parked in the tenant's parking space, and the next day was dumped in front of the property. So he was able to photograph it on top of the truck, and then in front of the property afterwards, and they claimed it was never theirs. So this happens more time and time, that the owner's claiming it's not theirs, it's the tenant's.
Through the chair, so
I
can
believe
finish.
David had something, or you want to
Just
finish
let
your
me
idea?
finish it
Go
up.
ahead.
I have an example. It happens to my next door neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
They cut the grass on Sunday because I was there. They put the grass aside. The garbage didn't pick it up, and then she got a warning, and it was never picked up.
Right.
Of course, she just told me, what do I need to do? She was so scared that she picked up all the grease and put it back inside the house, because she didn't know what to do. She says, they didn't pick it up, you sold me. She even put it in a plastic bag and everything, but you know how the garbage situation
That
that
they
we
miss
have,
a lot of
sometimes
times.
they don't pick it
They
up.
miss a lot of times.
So it's a lot of time. So in
Yeah.
that case, they need to report it right away.
Correct.
That would be the right way to do it.
Correct. And like I'm saying, this is not a hard line process. This is to be able to create a process to be able to do it, and it's really meant for the repeat violators.
I believe, David, did you want to say something?
Right. I mean, my whole concern is, I just feel that, when it comes to issues like this, that the burden of proof should fall upon whoever's accusing the tenant or who's accusing the landowner. In this case, it would be the city who's issuing such a violation. What is, the jurisprudence that takes place during an actual fine? Does the code enforcement go in there and just automatically, or do they, have some sort of proof other than just taking a picture of, something that is ruining the sidewalk?
No, let's say you could have sidewalks that broke over a period of time by themselves. If you've got a tenant, let's say, that parks a heavier truck in front of their property, that's the proof itself. You go through a process. This is not, your sidewalk's broken in front of your house, here, you're responsible for it. We're in the process right now of actually fixing a lot of sidewalks in the city that are damaged. But it's creating a vehicle that if we have definitive proof that you did damage it, you will be responsible.
Well, what's the actual proof, though? Do you know?
If you park, let's say, if you park a heavy truck in front of your house every day and the sidewalk's damaged, that's proof.
Okay.
I
So
You could
there's an
probably
actual-
argue and say it didn't happen, but,
So there's an actual documentation of
well, they're
correspondence,
not going
pictures.
to cite people that if they appeal it, we're gonna lose. Because remember, we're in the business of making sure that we get residents to comply. This is not about fining or anything, this is about compliance and getting, to prevent them from causing further damage.
Okay, I mean, I guess the only thing that I would like to see in here, if possible, and, you guys can discuss this as well, is, language that says that whereas, proof is shown, documented proof, showing that the resident, the tenant, the owner, the occupant is responsible for the damage. I just don't want to enter into a situation where, like the former resident who came up here and was complaining, where she didn't have anything to do with it, yet she was being held accountable for it. So I would like to see some language to protect the property owners, to protect, the tenants, that says that the burden, that there has to be some sort of proof that's documented to show that. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
I agree with you, but at the very same time, go ahead, Ms.
If I make a suggestion, a lot of times when cities enact ordinances like this, they will send out a letter to the residents and give them a heads up that this is, there is going to be enforcement on this issue. And listening to the fact that there's a lot of dumping going on right now, you might encourage those residents in that letter to notify the city in advance so that, the city has a heads up to look for that before they're actually citing the property owners. I know they did this in Coral Gables. I know they did this, I think it was Surfside, and it was helpful to the residents to be given a heads up beforehand.
Through the chair.
Just a suggestion.
Really quick. I know it may seem this way, especially with the way that it's written, but I don't foresee George Vega walking around with a stack full of warnings of violations and just writing people's addresses and say, hey, you have this.
I do.
Hey, you have this. I do not. Trust me, I work code enforcement.
Not that he has any malicious intent, but how he has no other way. I mean, what happens is you drive around, you see something, and you issue a citation. First a warning, and then something happens.
George Vega has been in the city for as long as I can remember. He has been code enforcement. He knows these streets almost as good as anybody else in the city. He knows what's been here. He knows what was caused by people. He knows what wasn't. That's why he's here, and he does his job well, in my opinion. So, with that being said, again, I don't foresee him with a stack of warning violations walking from street to, or house to house and saying, hey, you're in violation of this. Hey, you're in violation of this. Hey, you're in violation of this. Sorry, here's my proof. Go appeal it. I don't see that. And either way, when somebody goes to appeal, we have to have proof as a city. Otherwise, the magistrate's just going to look at it and say, hey, well, this isn't their dumping. It's gone.
Well, but that's my question. What proof?
Well, as the mayor just stated, the picture
I may be
of...
able to answer that question.
Go
So
ahead.
through the chair. First, I will say that I've worked with George Vega and our code enforcement. Those people do a phenomenal job. As a matter of fact, they issue more warnings than actual violations. The way that the chief of police and his command staff have instructed our code enforcement is if you issue a violation, you must search in the immediate area to find additional violations. If you find no violations, no other violations in the immediate area were located, so that way he's not specifically targeting. So, although I can see why Commissioner Borrero would say that, because we get a lot of complaints, but I think George Vega is doing a great job. Now I think I'll give two examples. Number one, at Emilio Parado's house, who sits on our zoning board on 113 Court, that is a habitual area for illegal dumping. I know the mayor and the chief of police have set up dummy vehicles. That hasn't worked. I think we need to do some more enforcement. The reality is that anybody who dumps garbage over 50 pounds is a felony, and most people actually don't know that. So we haven't really been arresting people for illegal dumping. And when you dump on a curb, it's over 50 pounds. That's a felony. That's how you start the enforcement. I think that we need clear and convincing evidence in order to issue these citations. So I'm willing to support this piece of legislation and hoping that it's done properly. I have all the faith in the world in our employees and our code enforcement. If I see that it becomes an issue, I'll bring it back up. and I'll say, hey, listen, this is an issue, but I think this is a step in the right direction. We do have an illegal dumping issue in our city. I think we need to beautify the city. So with that, I will move this item, and hopefully it all works out. So I move.
I will second it.
Through the chair, I would just like to move to include language that says, that just states that there has to be documented proof that shows that the person who's being cited is responsible.
Through the chair? Through the chair?
The fact that it's in front of their property shows.
No.
Probable cause, through the chair?
Go ahead.
Probable cause is what code enforcement or law enforcement needs. I understand what you're saying. You're trying to protect the residents, but they're not going to issue a citation unless they have clear and convincing evidence.
We just saw last meeting a property owner
Right.
come and complain to the city about
That's
this
why I
issue.
brought it up, right?
And we have a case in point.
But we don't have George Vega in front of us to say, I ripped open the garbage can and here is an FPL bill for that exact address. So that's the issue. So we're not magistrate in that sense. But like I said, and I'm with you, which is why I said it, but I'm willing to move this thing forward in hopes of there not being an issue later on.
I entirely agree with this. I mean, we need to keep obviously our sidewalks clean and safe, and it could be a huge liability to the city. It makes sense, and I'm not saying that George Vega is going around issuing citations to everyone left and right.
Well, I know you would
I think he's doing a good job. You know, all I'm saying is there have been cases, such as the last meeting, where property owners are being issued citations for something in which they're claiming that they're not responsible for. I think the proper thing to do is to put in place the language that protects them in case this happens. There's nothing that we have to worry about if we have proof. I don't think that's a bad amendment. I mean, if you guys want to,
Can we add clear and convincing evidence? Was that suffice?
I think so.
So can we amend, Mr. Mayor, through the chair, clear and convincing evidence into the language?
Sure.
So I move as amended.
Second.
Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Thank you.
This is the first reading.
Commissioner Villanueva,
Yes.
Commissioner Borrero,
Yes.
Commissioner Yanio,
Yes.
Commissioner Barrero,
Yes.
President Diaz.
Yes.
Yeah, that would be better. Clear and convincing. And it becomes an issue. We'll bring it back.
Item number 8, an ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Sweetwater, Florida, repealing Chapter 62, Taxation, Article 3, Section 62.46 through 62-71, occupational licenses of the City of Sweetwater Code, and replacing same with local business tax provisions per Chapter 205. Florida statutes, providing for severability, providing for inclusion in the code, providing an effective date. First reading, Mayor Lopez.
Okay, this is something that was requested by Carmen, head of our BTR. Last year, we actually tried to implement this last year. The attorney dropped the ball on it. Again, we met with Lynn. Lynn prepared this for us. We are governed where we can only increase our BTRs, theoretically, the business license 5% per year. And so this ordinance will give us the ability to increase our BTRs, so the licenses for the business 5% per year. This is the first reading, has to go to second reading now in July, so that insufficient time so that Carmen can get the notices out to be able to increase the licenses. For the average, you're looking at, city unfortunately capped their licenses very low years ago before this legislation was done. Right now, we're in a situation that we can only increase 5% per year. When you're looking at the majority of the licenses are $40 and $50 and $60, you're looking at a 5% increase would be $3.
More than that.
On
But
$60,
it's still-
it's ridiculous. We're ridiculously low, and Carmel is doing an estimation that if this would pass, it would probably generate about another $40,000 a year in revenue, which could potentially pay another clerk inside our office.
Through the chair.
Motion to
Hold on.
discuss.
Motion to discuss.
Let's
Okay.
motion to discuss. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Mr. Chair, if I might, we have a couple of blanks in this ordinance that need to be filled in, and I
Correct.
want to make some suggestions. And I also want to notify the commission that we do not have the Schedule A attached to this right now. And this is first reading. We're going to have to get the second reading in before July 1. So what I would like to do is when you make a motion to adopt this, assuming you do, that it is with the caveat that a schedule be attached which reflects the increase in the amounts, the taxable amounts, by 5%. So it's clear on the record, and then it will actually be done for second reading. With regard to the blanks in the ordinance, I didn't know what transfer fee or other fees you wanted. The general custom and practice would be 10% of the annual fee, not less than $3 and not more than $25, something like that. If that's acceptable, we'll include
Correct.
that
Right, we can include that as well.
as amended.
Through the chair,
So-
after Commissioner Borrero.
Really quick. Schedule A is going to include what? The copy of what we're charging for the business tax licenses
Correct.
with, and then a separate column showing what the proposed changes will be on the
Well, it'll
first
be
year.
5%, right? It'll be
5%.
5%. I would like to see.
increase.
I would like to see that number
Mhm.
for the
Yeah,
first year.
Carmen didn't have sufficient time to be able to get it on here.
I understand. So that's kind of what I want to see on Amendment A. Who was next in line? Commissioner Borrero?
Yeah, just a couple questions. So this has to be passed prior to July 1st
Correct.
in order for it to take effect,
Correct,
which is why you're presenting it without numbers.
correct.
Okay. So
But we're getting it on the record, so it will be there for second reading.
okay. So the
And you're voting on it as amended
okay.
here.
All right. So the second reading is okay if we pass it after July 1st.
No.
No,
No.
second reading has to
Has
be
to
previous
be
to July
before.
1st.
So you want to do another meeting then?
We have to do another meeting.
Don't we have one for the 25th?
We have one on the 25th, but we're not gonna have time, because I have to send the advertisement out to the newspaper to see if I'm able to advertise it by Friday. And I have to note the date of the meeting. We have to mention the day of the meeting for that second reading.
So it's not possible for the 25th? You
No,
won't have enough
no, I
time?
don't think so.
we might have to do a special meeting before the first.
Yeah, you have to get another
We have to
meeting
do
in
it
there for the
before the
second reading on this.
Okay, good luck. So I have just a couple questions. So the annual 5%, that's what's currently in place. Is that correct?
No, there is nothing in
There-
place.
Okay, so
There
this
is no
will-
increase set. The licenses, the fee on the
they're capped.
licenses have been,
What is it right now?
different licenses pay different fees. Let's say.
Right, it's based on your type of business.
Yeah,
the
let's
way
say,
you,
I don't know, beauty salon could be $40.
Mhm.
You know, where, let's say a comparable license for a beauty salon somewhere else, whether it be in the county or somewhere else, could be $80 or $90 or $100. Our license structure is very incorrect right now. It's
Right.
too cheap.
Right.
But we're capped by state statute that we can only increase 5% per year.
Okay. So how will this change the increases?
Yeah, so I think the
I want to make sure I'm fully understanding.
It can only increase 5%.
So I'm just want to make sure I'm fully understanding what this ordinance is doing. This is obviously swapping out all the language, going from occupational license to business tax receipt.
Okay.
Right. But what does this do to? What does this actually do to the business tax receipt?
It increases 5%
Just for this year?
for this year and every year. So we get to a point where licensing,
No,
did we finally put language in here where it would be recurring every year
No, you
or just
can't.
this year?
you can't. The only one that you have to vote on every year.
We have to do it every
Yes,
second
and,
year.
Okay,
but
so
the
then
reason
every
I
year has
did
to
it
come back.
as attachment A is you keep the ordinance intact and
And then you
just
just change it again next
change
year.
it into the
So this will be
fees.
recurring every year.
Yes.
Okay, so every year we'll have to vote on whether or not we want to do it at
Exactly.
5%.
A 5% increase.
That it won't
But the
take
maximum
effect.
that you can increase yearly is 5%.
Okay. But where's the language in there that we're increasing at 5%?
There, it isn't in there. That's
Lynn was
why
saying
I'm
that was
trying
one
to
of the
get it
fill in the
on the
blanks.
record as part of what you're voting on. So you've got first reading, voting on the 5%, and then you'll have the exact figures in the attachment A for
Okay.
the second reading, which, by the way, I think we
We-
can do on the
We can do
25th.
it, I think we can do it on
We
the
can do it
25th.
25th, that would be
Yes.
great, because we
Yeah.
have a
Right, you
meeting.
combine it.
Exactly.
You just add it in, it'll
I'm
be a
gonna
quick,
send the ad right
it'll be a
now when
quick
I go
second reading.
downstairs, I'm gonna
Yes,
send it to the
please.
paper
That would be great.
for advertisement.
Thank you, Carmen.
So this is justifying a 5% increase, is what you're saying?
This gives us the ability to vote
The
on a 5%
ability.
increase.
Okay.
And also, the language is antiquated. It's not consistent with the Florida statutes.
Exactly.
Unless you adopt this ordinance.
Yeah, I saw that. I just didn't see where we were increasing at 5%.
Lynn was saying
Yeah,
a couple
it's
of minutes
gonna-
ago that that's one of the blanks that has to be filled in with the 5%.
Okay. So mostly what this is doing is just the general language of our business tax receipt policies.
And enforcing a new schedule.
Yeah,
So it's like a blanket statement, and every year we go ahead and we vote on it.
yeah. Yeah.
It has to be done through an ordinance only.
Okay.
So do I have a motion?
Through the chair,
Go ahead.
So this is actually a great item. I recommended this a year ago. As I understand it, most businesses, every business is different. Like the Latin Cafeteria they pay $160 a year because of their square footage and what they do. You have the distribution centers in the north end of the city that pay more. You have retailers, and depending on how much they have in stock, they pay more and whatnot. This just gives us a mechanism. We are right now the lowest in Miami-Dade County as far as occupational licenses and our fees.
BTRs.
So,
It's very low.
so the increase of 5% to, let's say, the Latin Cafeteria is $8. And Alexis Adams in Carmen's office is the one that heads up this, and we all know that Carmen can use and desperately needs somebody. So I am willing to move this item if, Mr. Mayor, you guarantee me the revenues from that stay in Carmen's office and we have an additional body. Can I get a yes from you?
That's what the whole intention
Then
is.
I move this item.
As amended.
As
amended.
We have a motion by.
And through the chair, if I may,
Barreto.
just to give
Commissioner
Commissioner
Barreto,
Barreto a little bit of
Commissioner
comfort.
Yanio.
If the city would increase their BTRs every year, 5% for the next,
Less burden on our residents, long story short.
for the next 20 years, you'll still be below what your regular license costs anywhere else in the county.
I think it depends on the industry. I know that Best Buy is paying thousands of dollars.
Because of their stock.
Yeah.
Because of the stock,
Right, and-
right.
But that's because of the way that we tax them.
Correct.
Yeah.
But your average business here, your cafeteria, your beauty salon, all those, their licenses are probably 25% of what, a quarter of what they would be anywhere else in the county.
Yeah. But honestly, I really want to think twice before I vote for a tax increase. I mean, this isn't setting the schedule, this isn't setting the fee, this isn't setting the amount, correct? This is just giving us that ability.
This is setting the fee. It's setting the percentage,
The
5%.
fee will- the
And
fee
then
will
the
be
fees will be in the
presented on
appendix on the
schedule
on the second reading.
All this does is give us the ability to vote.
Correct,
on
all right.
increase.
Right, moved.
Okay,
Roll call, Madam Clerk.
do we have a second?
Yes.
We did. We
She
had
did.
a motion and we had a second by.
Motion and second.
Okay.
As amended.
As amended.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Borrero?
Yes.
Commissioner Yanio?
Yes, as amended.
Commissioner Barreto?
Yes.
Commissioner Villanueva?
Absolutely, yes.
President Diaz?
Yes.
Thank you, commissioners. Passed.
Item 9, adjournment.
Moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
We don't have to do that, right?